On the day the court officially explained to me that I had nothing, my ex-husband was in a great mood. "Well, Brooks," Derek leaned against the wall by the courtroom doors. "Welcome to the real world. You're officially broke now, so go dig leftovers out of the dumpster. Scraps, all that." He was smiling big and honestly, the kind of smile people usually wear only on billboards and in hell. I nodded. "Thanks for the update, Derek. I never would have figured it out without you." The courtroom doors shut behind him, and I was left alone in the hallway. No shop, no money, alone hanging on me like Christmas lights. Just without the lights. If this were a movie, I'd probably burst into tears, drop my bag, papers flying everywhere, and some handsome attorney would help me pick them up. But this wasn't a rom-com. This was Chicago. I just fixed the strap on my bag and walked down the stairs. I had two problems to solve: where to get money so I wouldn't end up on the street, and how not to strangle Derek right there in the parking lot. To be fair, I walked myself right into this. My name is Julia Brooks. Before I got married, I was the kind of person who always has a needle, thread, and a reasonably healthy sense of self-worth. I sewed. Dresses, school uniforms, bridal nightmares for suburban aunties, anything you could turn into money with an old but very alive Singer machine. I lived in a small apartment on the south side of Chicago. My mom, Taylor, died 2 years before Derek showed up. After the funeral, I sold her old car, upgraded my equipment, rented a tiny basement space for a workshop, and worked. I wasn't rich, but I paid the electric bill myself and didn't borrow from anyone. By our family standards, that was a win. About my father, I knew very little. The name, none. The story, short. "He doesn't know and doesn't want to," my mom said once. "We'll manage on our own." We did. There were two of us, me and her stubbornness. Turned out stubbornness is mortal, and I, unfortunately, am not. I did not meet Derek in a library, obviously. He was changing the oil in my neighbor's car, came upstairs for the keys, and saw me pulling a disaster of a dress out of her shopping bag. "You're really going to wear that?" I asked my neighbor. "What's wrong with it?" She got offended. "Nothing," I said. "Just let me redo it before the fabric sues you." Derek laughed, loud and confident. "You a seamstress?" he asked. "I'm a sewing girl," I said, skipping the part about design and ideas. "I fix things." "Perfect," he said. "I'm a mechanic. I fix metal and people. We're basically a business alliance." I thought he was joking. Turned out he was warning me. He was a typical Chicago working-class guy. Hands in motor oil, broad shoulders, even broader dreams. He owned a small auto repair shop on the edge of town. And by owned, I mean rented bay, a couple of lifts, an old coffee machine, and a mountain of debt. "See this, Jew?" He waved at the rusty garage doors. "Couple of years from now, this'll be a chain. Derek's Auto. I can just feel it." I could feel my feet going numb from the cold, but his enthusiasm was warm and contagious. We started dating. Then I moved in with him. Then came the standard package. White dress, a quick ceremony at the courthouse downtown, a couple of witnesses whose last names I still don't know. At the wedding, Derek gave me flowers and this line: "Now we're a team, Jew. Everything's shared. One life, one business." I got all misty-eyed like an idiot. What I should have asked was, whose name is the business actually under, Derek? Both of ours, or just yours? But I was busy holding flowers and believing. About 6 months into the marriage, he started nudging me toward the next level. "That little basement shop of yours is daycare," he said. "Sell it, sell your apartment, and we'll put everything into the shop. I'll put up a sign. We'll expand, get new equipment. You'll be in the office handling paperwork. Couple of years, we'll be printing money." "And my work? My clients?" I asked, a little unsure. "You'll still sew." He waved it off. "At night, At home, in front of the TV. He squinted at me. What? You don't trust me? Not trusting your husband 6 months into the marriage is like reading the instructions to a blender. It's right, but somehow embarrassing. I sold my apartment, sold the workshop, transferred the money to his account, because it was easier for the bank. A month later, a new sign went up over that gray concrete box. D&A Auto Repair. Why D&A? I asked. Derek and Associates. He winked. You're my main associate. I felt the first little tingle in the area where unicorn horns grow, but I kept quiet. Associate, I truly was. I did the books, answered phones, filled out forms, learned to hate the words tomorrow and discount. I sewed at night, at the corner of our house, which we also bought in his name, so the documents don't get messy. Derek smelled less and less like oil, and more like expensive body spray. Pretty soon, the word Amber appeared in our lives. Who's that? I asked when I saw her name in payroll. New office manager, he said casually. You yourself said you can't keep up alone. I hadn't said that. I'd just once fallen asleep face first on an invoice. Amber was young, flexible, and deeply invested in the shop's success. In tight dresses and heels, obviously. She sat in the office, laughed at his jokes, and her bonus package clearly wasn't just financial. I tried not to be jealous. After all, Derek was my husband. He promised me one life, one business. Apparently both of those could be shared with someone else. The moment I realized this wasn't just paranoia was the night he came home at 2 a.m. He smelled like cheap booze and someone else's perfume. You can recognize that even in the dark. Had a problem, client, he muttered, tripping over the threshold. Did the client have a name? I asked. Amber? He froze for half a second. You're gonna start again? Derek sighed. Jew, I'm working. For us. So you don't have to count every penny. I was already counting. Not pennies, anti-anxiety pills. I actually heard how bad it was from a cab driver. My name's Julia. I attract cab drivers like a magnet. That day I was coming back from the bank, where a woman in glasses politely explained to me that there was no way I was getting a small business loan to expand my sewing because I have... surprise! No official income. So everything's in your husband's name? She asked. On paper. Yeah, I said. I walked out of the bank and saw a yellow cab. Old car, Illinois plates, the driver in a baseball cap with a tired but kind face. South side, please, I said. Oh, over by Derek's shop? He perked up. I drive people there all the time. I flinched. You know him? Well, I know who he is. The driver shrugged. Loud guy, always with that girl. You know, his manager, Amber. They make out at the doors, think no one can see them. He noticed how pale I'd gone. You work with him? You could say that, I said. I live with him. Silence dropped in the car, thick as exhaust. My name's Peter, he said a minute later. But everyone calls me Uncle Pete. If you ever need a ride somewhere, not home, just say so. I nodded, not trusting my voice. A week later, I decided to check. I got to the shop early before opening, used my own keys. The office door was locked from the inside, but I could hear laughter. Amber's laugh, sharp, high, like she was getting paid per giggle. I knocked. Silence. Then a rustle. Something hit the floor. Someone hissed. I opened the door. Short version. Yes, Amber was at work. Derek was too. Half their clothes were taking a break on the chair. I looked at them. They looked at me. Oh, Jew, Derek exhaled. This isn't what you think. No? I asked politely. Then by all means, keep going. I'll think of something else. Amber shrieked, grabbing a folder of invoices to cover herself. I closed the door, walked out to the bays, called Uncle Pete. "Can you pick me up?" I asked. "Sure," he said. "Home?" I looked up at the D&A auto repair sign and finally saw what had been there from day one. Derek and Amber. "No," I said. "Not home." Uncle Pete had a small house on the edge of town, and a mom, Rita, with kind eyes and a habit of baking way too much. "Room's free," she said, when Pete brought me in with one suitcase and a face not suitable for mirrors. "If you want, stay. Pay when you can." "I don't want to impose," I started. "Sweetheart," Rita waved that away. "My cat owns more luggage than you. Come in." They had a little backyard and a screened porch where an old table used to stand. I put my sewing machine there and taped an index card to the door. Custom sewing, Julia Brooks. The first dress I made was for a neighbor girl's prom, dirt cheap. The second, her friend. The third, her friend's friend. 3 months later, I had more orders than nights. I took a small loan from a local credit union. This time the money was in my name. I officially didn't really have a husband anymore anyway. The divorce dragged on like an old elastic waistband. Derek's lawyer was smooth, expensive, and very sure of himself. Mine was a tired legal aid attorney with the eyes of someone who's seen everything and is no longer impressed. "Do you two co-own the business?" I asked him before the hearing. "On paper, no," he said. "The LLC is registered only under Derek's name." "But I gave him all the money!" I almost shouted. "My apartment, my workshop." "Do you have a loan agreement?" he asked calmly. "No, I'm his wife. I trusted him." He just sighed heavily. "Then it looks like a gift to your spouse. I'll try, but don't expect a miracle from this court." There was no miracle. There was Derek, though, as confident as ever. A couple of months before the divorce, he'd opened a new company in Amber's name, moved over the equipment, client base, and lease contract. The old company in his name was now an empty shell with debts. In court, his lawyer spread his hands. "Your Honor, there's essentially no marital property to divide. Only the outstanding loan, which is solely under Mrs. Brooks' name. Mr. Brooks himself is barely staying afloat." I listened and thought that if hypocrisy could be bottled, this man would be a billionaire. The judge tapped the gavel. "So," he said, "Mrs. Brooks remains responsible for the loan. No divisible assets have been identified." Derek's smile just got wider. That's how we got to his little dumpster speech. I walked out of the courthouse. It was hot and humid. One of those Chicago days when the asphalt smells like rubber and the air smells like other people's sweat. I didn't want to go home. Home meant Uncle Pete and Rita and their cookies and sympathy. I was not ready for warm words. I wanted something quiet without people. I walked to the nearest park, sat on a bench, bought a flimsy plastic cup of coffee from the kiosk. The kind of coffee that hates everyone and is ready to burn each person personally. I watched kids run around, a dog chasing a frisbee, a woman in a business suit fighting with someone over the phone. I just started to think that life, sure, is a horrible thing, but at least the free circus around me. And then an older woman sat down on the other end of my bench. She was the kind of woman you spot instantly. Neat haircut, expensive suit, sensible flats that were clearly not from the clearance rack. Silk scarf. A bag my loan would be ashamed to stand next to. She exhaled and shut her eyes. Her hand trembled, and her purse almost slipped off her arm. "You okay?" I asked automatically. "It's just the heat," she said. Her voice wavered. "And age, very inconvenient combination. Want some water?" I handed her my bottle. She took it, took a couple of sips. "Thank you," she nodded. "I'm Margaret." "Julia," I said. "Do you Come here often? She asked. Today's my first day here as an unemployed person, I answered honestly. Margaret looked closer. She had that look of someone used to evaluating people as assets. Are you worth dealing with, or should I just call my lawyer? Rough day? She asked politely. Let's call it an optimization day, I said. The court just informed me I officially own nothing, except a loan. She snorted. Oh, believe me, sometimes nothing is a luxury. Having a pile of problems is a lot worse. She lifted the bottle to hand it back to me, and froze. My sleeve had slid up a bit, and the small birthmark on my wrist was visible, a tiny spot in the exact shape of a heart. Oh my God, Margaret whispered. That? What? I automatically covered my wrist. It's just a birthmark. She stared at it like I'd pulled a grenade out of my bag. Sorry, she said finally. It's just, my son had the same one, in the same place. I tried to smile. I have a few things in common with my ex-husband too, I said. For example, we used to have the same last name in the documents while sharing 0 assets. She didn't smile. She kept looking at my hand, then quietly asked, Your mother, what was her name? Taylor, I said. Taylor Brooks. Before that, she didn't like talking about her last name. She grew up in foster care. In which state? Illinois. Then she got a scholarship, went to college, met some rich kid, got pregnant. He freaked out. I shrugged. The usual. She walked away and didn't tell anyone anything. Margaret shut her eyes. Right there on that bench in a Chicago park. When she opened them, she looked 10 years older. And you never knew who your father was? She asked softly. Honestly, I didn't want to know, I said. If the guy once chose, I don't want this, why would I give him a second shot? She nodded, slowly. Then she pulled herself together, put on some kind of familiar businesswoman mask. Julia, you said you're unemployed? I'm a seamstress, I clarified. Right now, without a workshop. But the machine's alive, so I guess I am too. Do you give out business cards? I snorted. I ran out of cards, but I do have a pen and a receipt. I wrote my name and number on the back of the kiosk receipt and handed it to her. Here, in case your wardrobe also needs optimizing. Margaret took the scrap of paper carefully with 2 fingers, like it was thin ice. Thank you, Julia, she said. I may really need your help. I found out who she was a couple of days later. My phone rang just as I was fixing a zipper on a dress, and Rita's cat was trying to steal my pins. Ms. Brooks? A man's voice asked. This is the secretary for Ms. Margaret Harlow. She'd like to invite you over for a fitting. I looked around at my makeshift porch studio and at the dress hanging above the microwave. Ms. Harlow is who? I asked carefully. Harlow Group. Real estate construction. The voice clearly assumed that not knowing them in Chicago is like not knowing it snows in winter. Would tomorrow at 3 work for you? I glanced out the window. Uncle Pete was bent over his car again. 3 works, I said. Margaret Harlow's mansion sat in one of those quiet, 2-green neighborhoods where the grass is trimmed better than the bangs I cut. At the gate, a security guard named Sam and a huge dog that looked like a small bus met me. He doesn't bite? I checked as the dog sniffed my bag. Only if you're the IRS, Sam said dryly. His name's Kraken. Perfect. I'm broke. And the rich lady's dog is named after a sea monster. The symbolism writes itself. Inside, the house looked the way heaven probably looks for interior designers. High ceilings, art, rugs, chandeliers, staircases designed to make you feel underdressed. Margaret was waiting in the living room. Different suit, different scarf, same eyes. Julia, she nodded. Thank you for coming. There was a dress on the coffee table. Expensive fabric, terrible cut. Rich people have this weird habit of cheaping out on the things they wear all the time. I want you to save it, Margaret said. It's very dear to my heart, much dearer than the designer who ruined it. We discussed darts, length, sleeves. I tried to sound like a professional, not like a girl who'd just stepped into a place where a square foot of floor costs more than my old apartment. You'll need a fitting, I said. We can do it now or another day. Now, she decided. The sooner the better. She went into the next room to change. I stayed, looking over the shelves full of framed photos. That's when I saw my mom. Taylor was looking at me from a silver frame. Young, in a simple dress, with half a smile. Background: a fancy garden that definitely wasn't our South Side. I nearly dropped the pins. Where did you get her photo? I asked when Margaret came back into the room wearing the dress. She stopped and followed my gaze. Her face went as white as the fabric I was afraid to ruin. How do you know this girl? She asked quietly. That's my mom, I said. Taylor Brooks. Well, she wasn't Brooks yet back then. I looked up. And you? Margaret sank into the nearest armchair like someone had just removed all her bones. That was a long time ago, she whispered. A very long time ago. She went silent. So did I. The dress hung between us like a surrender flag. Sit down, Julia, Margaret said at last. We need to talk. And we both might have to apologize to people who aren't here anymore. The story she told me sounded like a bad soap opera, but it was my life from before I was born, so I had to sit through it. Years ago, Margaret had one son, Tyler, only child, only heir to Harlow Group. I built this business myself, she said, and I wanted him to never know what foster care is, or cheap motels, or expired food, and of course he fell in love with a girl who grew up in all of that. Taylor came into their house as a project, a program for supporting kids aging out of foster care. Margaret offered her a room, a job as a helper, and a chance. On her own terms, obviously. She was quiet, smart, stubborn, Margaret said. And naturally, Tyler fell for her immediately. They both thought I didn't notice anything. She noticed everything, and she did not like it. I saw her as a threat, Margaret went on. I thought she hesitated. That she was a gold digger, that she wanted his last name, not him. I'd heard this story before, from my mom, only from the other side. The night Taylor came to her and said she was pregnant, Margaret made a choice. It was summer. Storm, she said, staring off somewhere. I threw her out, with her bags, told her to disappear and never even think of my son again. Tyler was at some off-site event. I intercepted him, lied that she used him. He tried to find her, but... She sighed. He didn't make it in time. My mom described that night differently. Thunder, rain, a suitcase, a door slamming in her face. A few months later, Tyler died in a car accident. End of the direct Harlow line. I thought I had time to fix it, Margaret said quietly. God turned out to be busy with other things. Taylor left, changed her last name, moved, had me. Never crossed paths with the Harlow world again. Margaret spent years looking for the child, paid private investigators, met girls with photos and tragic stories. Each one wanted a chance. Or money. None of them were your mother, Margaret said. But I kept looking. Until one day, I decided maybe this was punishment. For that night. She glanced at my birthmark, at the photo, at me. And then I met a girl in the park who looked just like Taylor in her 20s, with the same birthmark, and I heard her name. I said nothing. Sometimes words are too cheap a tool. Julia, Margaret said finally. If you want to walk out right now, walk. You don't owe me anything. I made way too many wrong choices to have the right to another chance. So, I said slowly, you threw my pregnant mother out into the street. She grew up in foster care, killed herself working just to survive, then dragged me up alone. Your son, my father, I guess, died without ever knowing I exist. Yes, Margaret said. That's about right. And all this time you've been searching for me, sometimes handing money to scammers? Yes, I exhaled. You know, if someone told me this story in a Walmart parking lot, I'd assume it's a scam. I can do a DNA test, she said quietly. If you want. I looked at my mom's photo, at my reflection in the glass, at my birthmark. Let's do it, I said. Not because I don't believe you. I just want at least one thing in this story to be correct on paper. The DNA test took a week and gave us what was already obvious, 99.99% match. Margaret Harlow was my biological grandmother. Her son Tyler, my father. My life wasn't a random glitch. It was the result of one very specific scandal. I'm sorry, she said when we got the results. I can't bring your mother back. I can't give you your father, but I can at least not make the same mistakes again. I'm afraid repeating them would be tough, I said. I'm not pregnant by your son. He's dead. And you're not the woman who kicks pregnant girls out into the rain anymore. She gave a small, sad smile. I'm still that woman, Julia. I just can't afford rain like that anymore. She did something I didn't expect. I want you in Harlow Group, Margaret said. Not as some girl I'm helping, as my heir and partner. You're talented, smart, and you know how to work. That's first. Second, I never wanted my business to go to strangers. She looked me over carefully. And third, honestly, it pisses me off that my granddaughter is stuck with a loan because she trusted an idiot. That at least I can fix. Within a month, my loan was paid off. Within 3, I had a small but very real studio in a good neighborhood with a sign, Julia Brooks Atelier, by Harlow Group. 6 months later, I was sitting in conference rooms with lawyers and accountants, hearing words like share, equity, valuation, and understanding at least half. Margaret was not some sentimental cereal commercial grandma. Don't think I'm doing you a favor, she said. You're useful to me too. Otherwise, all this goes to people who don't even know which end of a needle is sharp. That was her weird version of love. I was learning to take it. Alex came along almost casually. This is Alex. Margaret introduced him at one meeting. An investor, and possibly the person who'll teach you not to be afraid of numbers. He wasn't a mechanic, already a plus. He didn't promise me one life, one business. He showed me spreadsheets and asked questions that didn't make me cry. They made me want to Google things. We worked together, then we started getting coffee, then we stopped pretending it was just work. I can't promise I'll never disappoint you, Alex said bluntly. But I can promise that if I decide to act like an ass, I'll tell you first, and then my lawyer. Best marriage proposal I'd ever heard. We had a simple wedding, no fireworks, a small party with people who actually know my middle name. A year later, we had a son. What do we call him? Alex asked, while I, wrecked and happy, held a tiny bundle. I looked over at Margaret. She was standing by the hospital window, gripping the frame like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Tyler, I said. Let at least one Tyler in this family grow up knowing he has a dad who didn't run. Margaret turned away, pretending to watch the parking lot. Really, she was watching her mistakes melt away in that tiny pink face. I didn't think about Derek much. Almost. Bits of news floated by on their own. Chicago's big, but rumors travel fast. Amber opened her own shop near the old one. Derek fought with his partners. They're in trouble with the IRS. I think Amber left him for some lawyer. I listened, then went back to my life. I sewed. I negotiated. I drew up growth plans with Alex. Evenings I fed Tyler, and on Sundays I'd go with Margaret to the cemetery, to her son's grave, my father's, the man I never knew but somehow still ended up looking like. He was stubborn, Margaret said once, straightening flowers. Like you, and like your mother. Perfect, I said. So Tyler had literally no chance of being born easy. We laughed, sometimes for real. 3 years after that court day when they officially promoted me to broke, I was standing behind the bar in our own small restaurant. Yeah, a restaurant. Alex had said one day, "If we've already dressed half the city, let's at least feed the neighborhood." We found an old corner space, gutted it, opened a cozy place selling simple food and good wine. In one corner we had a glass case with a couple of my dresses. Margaret insisted, "The world needs to see who the real star is here." Tyler sat in his high chair, gnawing on a piece of white bread and dropping it on his lap every few minutes. I was wiping the counter when the door opened and a man walked in who I once thought was my team. Derek looked bad. The guy who taught me not to count every penny was now clearly counting coins before walking in somewhere. Wrinkled jacket, worn-out shoes, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept or hadn't looked at himself in a mirror in a long time. He froze when he saw the sign inside. Julia Brooks, co-owner. "Well, hey, Jew," he said, coming up to the bar. His voice was hoarse, like something out of an old movie. "Heard you made it." "Hey, Derek," I said. "Heard you didn't." He tried to smirk, but it came out crooked. "Listen, I need to talk to you," he started. "Can I sit?" "It's a free country," I said. "Tables, too." We sat. Tyler loudly hiccuped at that exact moment. Derek flinched. "You have a kid," he said, like I'd personally broken some universal schedule. "Crazy, right?" I said. "People sometimes continue living even after their ex-husbands predict careers out by the dumpster." We sat in silence for a second. Outside, someone laughed and ordered coffee. Inside, Kraken, our restaurant dog, long story. Margaret's dog had puppies, we got one with the personality of a bouncer, quietly sniffed Derek's pant leg. "Julia, please," Derek whispered. "I know I was a jerk. I get it. But we were a family. You don't really want to see me completely in the gutter, do you?" I looked at him, at the man who once convinced me to sell everything and put it all in his name, who'd stood in that courthouse hallway cheering for my bankruptcy. "What do you want, Derek?" I asked. "A loan. Help. A chance. I'll bounce back. Pay you back." He faltered. "Or at least not starve to death." Tyler chose that moment to drop another chunk of bread on the floor. Derek jumped again. "You named him Tyler," he said, like the universe had really gone off script. I shrugged. "We have a family tradition of making mistakes and then correcting them," I said. "He's part of the correction." We went quiet again. Kraken scooped up the fallen bread, then settled down by my feet, still eyeing Derek thoughtfully. "Julia, come on," Derek tried again. "You're rich now. You've got a restaurant, your millionaire grandma, your investor. You really can't help your ex-husband out?" That was the moment the universe had probably been working toward this whole ridiculous time. The man who once told me to go eat out of dumpsters was now begging me for crumbs. I looked at Tyler, at his little hands, at the crumbs on the table, at Kraken, faithfully catching every piece that hit the floor. "You know, Derek," I said quietly, "when you stood in that courthouse hallway and explained I'd be digging for scraps, you weren't completely wrong." He looked up at me. "Yeah, those first couple of months were rough, but then I realized something. The dumpster wasn't me. It's the people who send others there." I leaned a bit closer. "I'm not your bank, Derek. I'm not a charity. I'm the woman who trusted you once and paid way too high a price for it. I'm not paying twice." He opened his mouth, then shut it again. I stood up. "If you want food, the menu's at the bar. Prices are for people who pay for themselves. If you want to talk about life, find a therapist. If you want money—" I shrugged. "Try out back. There's a dumpster. Maybe you'll have better luck with it than I did that day." Kraken gave a soft bark, like he agreed. I picked Tyler up. He snuggled into my neck, warm and heavy. Alex waved at me from the end of the bar, just finishing a call with a supplier. "Everything okay?" he asked when I walked over. "Yeah," I said. "The past tried to take out a loan. I declined." He smiled. Margaret, sitting at a corner table with a glass of white, looked up and gave me the slightest nod. I walked past Derek without looking back. This time, no man was following me, holding car keys and promises of one life, one business. I already had my own life, my own business, my own kid, and not a single dumpster on my way. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment. See you in the next video.